Greetings, greetings. Greetings, greetings. Once again, this is your brother Baba Jason with another edition of African Center Tech Talk. As always, we are here the third Monday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is our first broadcast for the year 2015. So I want to say a Happy New Year to all who are listening in. We appreciate you spending this time with us. Of course, today is our beloved ancestor, Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. So we will be dedicating this edition to him and speaking a little bit about what the remembrance of his work and his life means to us, of course, from an African-centered technology perspective. Also, I want to let you know what the URL is, the link. If you would like to chat with us, you're going to go to www.actechtalk.blogspot.com. That's www.actechtalk.blogspot.com. And when you get to that URL, you can click on the chat button on the top menu, and it will take you to a page where you can not only view our presentation this evening, but you'll be able to enter questions or comments via a talk.io embedded widget that I have on the page so that we can keep up discussions. You can ask any questions and you have them answered live as we're streaming. I'm going to take a second and make sure I have that up. Okay. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. As I already mentioned, I am your host, your brother Baba Jason. I am the owner of Just Right Technology. And as a part of Just Right Technology's focus on bringing proper technology education to the community, we created an initiative called the Institute of Just Right Technology. And that initiative is what sponsors our monthly African Center Tech Talk. If you would like to know more, find out more about that initiative, you can send us an email at info@justrighttechnology.com. That's info, INFO, at justrighttechnology.com. That's all one word, justrighttechnology.com. And as I mentioned, we will be celebrating and honoring our ancestor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it's going to be a short presentation because I know many people have this day off and are attending to chores and other activities to prepare for the work week. But I do appreciate your time, and I'm going to keep it light. The introductions. The purpose of Tech Talk is to stimulate the African family toward practical principles, methods, and projects around the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math fields that contribute to African liberation. As an experienced technician turned instructor and developer, I'm working on changing health, culture, family, education, and economics with the power of IT. I was born and raised in the Bronx, and I am currently developing a STEM institution with a concentration of vocational training and technology curriculums for the community. I want to take this time also to mention that this year we will be offering a small fee of $5 for any businesses or organizations that would like to advertise on our African Centered Tech Talk. We will post a flyer or banner before we do our presentations and make the community aware of your project and or initiative, the date, the time, where they can find out more and talk to what you are trying to do. And that is all being offered for a small fee of $5. If you would like more information around that, you can send us an email to the same email address at info@justrightechnology.com. Okay. So the topic, or the subject, I should say, is remembering our beloved ancestor. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. means a lot to many people on this planet. To me in particular, he was a figurehead for what I felt like was African American history in this country. As a child, Martin Luther King Jr. was the highlight of all topics around African American history in the public education system. Not only did we do projects around his name and many of his famous speeches and marches, but even for a small time, when I was in the Glee Club, we did a concert in dedication of him. Even when Black History Month comes up, which we're just a couple weeks away from, he still remained a primary focus. It wasn't until later on in life that I realized that there was much more to African American history, and there was much more to African history as it pertained to the world. And of course, there was way more to the history of civil rights in this country and globally. That is not to say that the effort and contributions of Dr. Martin Luther King are not important and are not crucial. It's just a reminder that at times we are sometimes aggressively taught that some of our ancestors are more important than others, when in actuality they are all important and they should all be spoken about with such importance and remembered and celebrated. So on this day, with the rest of the country and predominantly the rest of the world, I have chosen to celebrate him as well. I had planned on making a connection between our great ancestor and technology as it relates to today. I'm doing a similar project on Marcus Garvey, because some of our ancestors, like Marcus Garvey, in an age where they didn't have much of the modern technology we have today. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have as much access to mass transportation. These men were still able to travel the nation and travel the world, spread their message, grow their organizations, and ultimately create great fanfare. So the question I had asked if these ancestors were alive today, what technology devices or what technology platforms would they best use? And at my heart, I've come to the conclusion that Dr. Martin Luther King, as well as Marcus Garvey, they wouldn't use any of it because these men were that powerful in their approach. They didn't need such devices to necessarily motivate them to do the work, nor did they need those devices to motivate folks to be interested in their work. They put their best foot forward, and they allowed the example of their leadership and the example of their work and dedication to be their sort of their YouTube channel or their fan base. So we'll see much more of that later on in the year. I'll get into greater detail where I will sort of plot out how Marcus Garvey in particular made certain strides over a short amount of time, where a lot of folks are having a really challenging time doing that for themselves in a very technology intensive world, where at the drop of a dime, you could be talking to somebody across the globe, but we still cannot seem to gain not just friendship or collaboration, but we can't gain access to what's going on in the world. When Martin Luther King needed to address an issue in a particular town, he went to that town. As I mentioned, they didn't have much access to mass transportation. There weren't as many airlines and as many airports as we have today. There weren't as many bus routes and bus stations as we have today. There weren't even as many roads. Of course, these things did exist, but not in the great number that they do today. So I examine that because it's important to go back and realize that before we tend to just toss aside everything that came before, we have to really analyze the importance of it, how it was used, and can we benefit from going back to those ancient ways, or not even ancient, but going back to those simple, practical ways of doing it. And of course, that is the mission that we look to accomplish here at African Center Tech Talk. We want to show folks not only what's new and advanced, but we want to help you understand how it can become a practical solution to you and your family, and of course, to your larger African community. Okay. So, of course, our beloved ancestor was known for his boycotts, for his protests, for his speeches. But in today's world, we see that a lot of people are still emulating this practice, and they're not getting the same results that he did, potentially because they're not facing the immediate threat that Dr. King was and many of the other civil rights advocates. Sure, there's still confrontations. Sure, there's still forms of brutality being plagued against us. But our ancestors had to march and stand waiting for people who had no moral ethics. They had no control whatsoever. And at a moment, they would attack. Dr. King was arrested a number of times in his lifetime. But the point that I'm trying to make is that he used his physical protesting strategies in a time where it was the most threatening for him in his life. Nowadays, we have the ability to enact a different form of protest, a digital protest. And someone say, well, what is a digital protest? Well, it's very simply just the act of protesting digitally. Instead of physically going out into the world and protesting, you can protest digitally, because a lot of our information and a lot of our power comes from the digital world today. And I want to talk about 3 ways in which that was done in 2014 that led up to this year, 2015. The first, of course, is the great use of social media by many people all over the world. Of course, we were saddened by the slaying of our young teenager, Mike Brown, and that caused a huge community uproar. And many say that uproar only had changes or only forced change because people stayed aggressive. They stayed active on the street. I tend to believe, as a technologist, that a part of that was the digital aspect of it, keeping it alive. Without people being aware that this was going on through their digital connections, they wouldn't have been motivated to protest in their own communities, to protest in their own countries and in their own cities, to use things like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook to post pictures of themselves with their hands up, with signs, with numbers of their community, family and friends around them. And of course, this was spearheaded by the use of hashtags. Now, if you don't know what a hashtag is pretty much a way of taking a word and making it a keyword in the digital space. Okay, you'll typically see hashtags used on Twitter, but you also see them used on Instagram and Facebook as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and just read what a standard definition of it is, or what the internet, according to the internet, what they define a hashtag as. A hashtag is a word or an unspaced phrase prefixed with the hash character. And of course, that is the number sign. That number sign is located on a standard keyboard above the number 3. Okay, so the button that has the number 3 on it has the hashtag or the number sign right above that. Okay. It is a type of metadata tag. Words or phrases in messages and microblogging and social networking services such as Facebook, Google+, Instagram, Twitter, or VK may be tagged by entering the hashtag before them. A real simple explanation is it helps whatever phrase or acronym you're trying to attach a digital history to, you use a hashtag. Now it becomes instantly searchable. Now I can go on Twitter and hashtag, like for instance, I know 2 popular hashtags today, of course, for our beloved ancestor's birthday. Is hashtag Martin Luther King Day and hashtag MLK. Okay, and if you go into applications like Twitter and type in these hashtags, you'll see the amazing amount of people not only following the hashtag, but who are using the hashtag in their own messages. All right, so these are really, really important ways that you can digitally protest. All right, so I just wanted to mention that. The second most important thing that I felt like didn't get a lot of attention was a video that was posted by a hacker group known as Anonymous. Now, what I would like to do is I would like to play that video for you. It's just a couple of seconds long. Let me just cue it up and I'll be able to play that for you. Right now.
The 18-year-old male victim had no weapon on him, and he had his hands up in the air, but was still shot by police multiple times. Greetings, world. We are Anonymous. On August 9th in Ferguson, Missouri, the 17-year-old and unarmed Mike Brown was shot several times and killed by an officer of the Ferguson Police Department. His body was left to lie in a pool of blood in the sweltering heat for hours while 15 police departments militarized the area against protesters, sealed the roads leading to Ferguson in a vain attempt to prevent protesters from reaching the city. The police has clearly crossed a line in the sand. For this reason, Anonymous will not be satisfied this time, as we have in the past, with simply obtaining justice for this young man and his family. Anonymous demands that the congressional representatives and senators from Missouri introduce legislation entitled Mike Brown's Law that will set strict national standards for police conduct and misbehavior in the USA. To the good people of Ferguson, take heart and take your streets. You are not alone. We will support you in every way possible. Occupy every square inch of your city. Demand justice. Staying silent today could result in the death of your kid tomorrow. To the Ferguson Police Department and any other jurisdictions who are deployed to the protests, we are watching you very closely. If you abuse, harass, or harm in any way the protesters in Ferguson, we will take every web-based asset of your departments and governments offline. That is not a threat. It is a promise. Attacking the protesters will result in the release of personal information on every single member of the Ferguson Police Department, as well as any other jurisdiction that participates in the abuse of this state's own law. We will seize all your databases and emails, pools, and dump them on the internet. This is your first and last warning. The time has come for more than simple justice for these atrocities. The time has come to draw a line in the sand. The time has come to bring those to justice who serve to protect us, not kill us, until justice prevails. Hack and protest will replace it. Operation Ferguson engaged. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Ferguson, expect us.
Okay, so of course that was the video, and I'm running low on time, so I'm going to go a little faster. But many of you may or may not know, but even after that video was posted, there were still an incident or two that happened. So that group went on to actually put out in the media some information about some of the officers. But these are the types of instances of digital protests I'm speaking of. The last one, of course, is the shutdown of the motion picture. I can't even remember the name of it now, but the one with the Jewish okay, sorry about that. But the motion picture where they were basically making fun of the Korean government. I didn't get any news about who was behind those attacks on Sony, who of course was the company behind the movie. But this is another form of digital protest. This is what people are doing. This is how people are fighting back. They're using the power of technology and the power of the internet to say, listen, enough is enough. Okay, so these are all great examples, I think, of how we've as a world, we've learned from ancestors like Dr. Martin Luther King. The next point I wanted to bring up is that all that I felt like I knew about our beloved ancestor, I was able to find two things in particular that I did not know about his lifetime. And so I want to just read those off quickly. And these are just new to me, according to the internet, of course. Presently, there are over 700 streets in the United States named after our ancestor. That is a huge amount. That is a lot of square footage, if you will. And as most of us know, in some cases, these streets are not the nicest neighborhoods and are plagued with not only violence, but in some cases, drugs and other degenerate behavior. I would love to find out which one of these streets are actually kept in more economically, well-built communities that are doing well, and of course occupied by Africans. The second one is that in 1991, There was an academic inquiry which concluded that our ancestor committed plagiarism while acquiring his PhD. Now, I brought this point up merely because of when it was concluded. It says 1991. Our ancestor had long been assassinated and killed, but this kind of information was still brought out into the media. So it's important to realize that um, no matter who you are, no matter what people say or how they choose to frame you, they're always going to look to put that negative cast on us as a people. We have to remember that even as they pretty much compliment us, they're going to insult and bash and beat us down all at the same time. And that one I thought was pretty interesting, especially when you look at the etymology of plagiarism and where that comes from. All right. The next one is just some favorite quotes of mine from our beloved ancestor, and I'll only read a few because we're running low on time. I love the first one, of course, which states, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." And I'll read one more. "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." Okay. But it's very important to acknowledge the works of our ancestors and the words that they use, especially in public appearances, because it was done with true intent. Okay. And as we have 1 minute left, this is pretty much the time for Q&A. So I'll go over to the chat and see if we have any questions before I officially sign off. Okay. Questions? Okay. Well, in conclusion, I would like to say, Mirasi, for coming by. We give thanks. Continue to support us. That link, that URL link you can see right here on the conclusion page is actechtalk.blogspot.com. My website, of course, is justrightechnology.com. And we are hosting two more blogs. One, JRT African Solutions.blogspot.com. That's where we also write articles that have practical solutions from a STEM perspective. And then the last URL is jrttech.blogspot.com. And that's where I offer more straightforward technical advice to not only clients, but to any readers out there who are interested in doing some technical troubleshooting of their own. All right. I appreciate you for joining us for this time. Once again, my name is Baba Jason, and I'll see you next month for another edition of Africa Centered Tech Talk.